we're gonna start 6:06. Yeah, that's plenty of time. Hey guys, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you guys showing up for my webinar. Trying to learn about QA, about the field of QA, and also to meet me. Because some of you already taken my courses, as I can see, as you mentioned, and I'm sure it's nice for you to meet me. Even though you're familiar with my voice, you know exactly, like, it's literally me. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. My name is Adamas Kung Fu. I run supersqa.com. Actually, I should have another slide that talks about my background a little bit. Yes, sir. So I am a senior software engineer in test, or a QA engineer, a senior QA engineer. It's all terminology. We'll talk about it. A lot of times you hear the word SDET, software development engineer in test. Okay, so that's really what I am. My background, my educational background is in mechanical engineering. I went to school in Silicon Valley. I did both my bachelor's and my master's in San Jose State University, right there in the heart of Silicon Valley. And I worked a little bit as a mechanical engineer for 4 years while I was going to grad school. Once I got in my grad school, finished my grad school, I quit, traveled a little bit, and came back, and I was looking for a job. It was tough to get a mechanical engineering job because, you know, all manufacturing is a lot of mechanical engineering jobs are in manufacturing, and all manufacturing is gone. So it was kind of tough, and I was researching on what field to get into. I heard about software testing. I did not know it was this big, and I did not know it was this great, but it was an opportunity. So I started researching it, and I did a short 3 months training on manual testing. And then from then I taught myself how to do Python. I got a little internship, and the rest is history. Like, I've been doing this for about 9 years. I really, really love it. I love the coding aspect of it, and I love being an engineer, really, right? I'm an engineer by training in mechanical, but the software engineering, a whole different world. I love it because you think of something, you build it, and you see the results right away. In mechanical engineering, you think of something, you model it, and it can take months until you see the result because somebody has to actually make it. Usually you work on a physical product. So I really love the software industry. Okay, so that's my background. That's just introduction about me. So what we're going to talk about today is it's only 1 hour, and I try to be very respectful of everybody's time, so I'm going to move a little quick. But the point of this webinar is just to introduce you to the field, even though it sounds like some of you might already know about the field. But just to introduce you why I love it, just giving you my opinion, my perspective, what it takes, how to get started, and how to basically keep going. That's the plan, and I'm available for a meetup, like for well, if you guys are in Vegas. I live in Las Vegas now. I'm from Silicon Valley for the last 20 plus years, but I live in Las Vegas now. If you guys are around here, of course we can meet, but you can schedule a meeting with me it's totally free on my website. I'll share it later on, and we can talk one-on-one for 30 minutes or more, and you can learn more about whatever the field, about me, about my program, or anything like that. Okay. And at the end of this program, at the end of this webinar, basically after an hour, you guys can ask me a question. Your mics are all enabled. You can turn them on anytime you want. But I prefer to do the Q&A at the end because I'm recording this. This is being recorded, and I will be sharing it with you guys, as well as I might post it on YouTube, or I might post it on my website. So I'd rather keep, the webinar like straight up presentation, and then we can just discuss. I don't really have to leave after the hour. I can stay and talk as long as you want me to. Okay, as long as there are questions, I will be around. All right, so we're just going to do this. We're going to talk about a brief overview of the QA field. All right, this is basically what I just talked about, the topics we're going to talk about. So what is QA? What is QE? So QA stands for quality assurance. QE is quality engineering. SDET is software development engineer in test. Software tester, automation engineer, manual tester, all of those mean similar things. Not like manual test engineer and software tester, they might mean differently. Well, definitely manual tester would mean differently because that's a manual, right? And the rest of them are more of automation, but a manual tester is also a QA. Depending on his skill set, Also, it can be a QE, quality engineering. So because we are involved, especially when you're an automation person like me, you're involved in every part of the development lifecycle. You are part of building the product. When you're building a software, you have the engineers, right, the developers that are building the product, and the QA is really part of all of that. Like, we have the designers and the project managers, the product managers, the engineering managers. We got all kinds of people, and QA is just as important as anybody else in the team or in the program. So that's why really QE is a more appropriate term. And where I work in my company, we refer to each other as QE, not really QA, even though nobody's going to get offended or anything like that. All right, so those are just terminologies. They all mean a similar thing. So a QA is basically responsible for the quality of the product, right? We are the ones who are testing the product, making sure it meets the requirements. There is a requirement. There is something that a product is supposed to do, supposed to look like, supposed to act, and our job is to make sure it does what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't break easily, or it can handle errors, and when something goes wrong, it can handle it properly. So we are, like I said, a critical component of SDLC. You might hear the word SDLC often, software development lifecycle. So there's basically a cycle. When you're building a software, you go from the idea, from the design to implementation to testing to deploying to the public, then to maintaining it, and keep going in circles, implementing new features. And QEs are a very critical component of that whole life cycle. We are the gatekeepers of the engineering team. Usually the QA is the last person that basically stamps it with approval, right? That's the person that says, okay, this product is ready to go to the public, ready to be released to production. Then normally the environment that open to the public or being used is called production. It's a production environment. And before that, there can be several environments. There can be a development environment, there's a testing environment, there's a staging environment. There can be all kinds of different environments, but usually production environment is the main one that the public actually can access and use your product. And as QAs, we are the gatekeepers. We are the ones who say yes or no. If a QA says no, the product is not ready, then it will not go out in most cases. Of course, managers can override it, but usually you just discuss it, you figure out, you decide the risk versus the reward, and you decide if the product can be released or not. But I want you to just understand how big of a role a QA is, how important a QA person is, because there is a little bit of a stigma that I hear here and there that it's less of a role, like compared to the developers. But as an automation engineer, you're also a developer. I have to be very careful when I use the word developer, because I am a developer, but I'm writing code that tests other code as opposed to building the product itself. All right, so there's tons of more things we do: testing, releasing, coordinating, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So for those of you who are totally new, what is a testing, right? So I'm going to give you just a quick example of what software testing actually looks like. So let's say this is a very easy to understand because everybody just knows a login page. So I'm just using Facebook as an example, facebook.com, the web app. So some test cases would be, can a valid user log in? Does a wrong password show the correct error message? Right? That's called a negative testing. Can logged in user post a picture? Can they post a video? Can they send a message? Is everything else spelled correctly? The color, the button, the location, everything, right? So you know how the page is supposed to work, or you have a list of requirements. You might have an official requirement, or you might use common sense. It's a combination of both. It's more of like an art. So you have a requirement, you know what exactly the page should look like. So you're going to go and test it, making sure the page does what it's supposed to do and it looks like the way it's supposed to look like. Or in terms of error messages, making sure like you make it fail. You use the wrong password or an empty password or an empty username, and make sure it just doesn't blow up. It actually shows you an appropriate message per the requirement. So that is an example of testing. And let's look at the mobile app. So we have a Facebook app, right? A web app. My experience is mostly on the web app. So all the websites you use, right? It's Facebook.com, CNN.com, Amazon.com. All of those are called, they're apps, but they're web apps. And most of them have a mobile version of it, right? There is a mobile app for each one of those. And that's different. So the way you test it, the test cases are different. So each thing that I'm talking about here is called a test case. Whenever you test something, does this work? That's a test case. Does that work? That's a test case. When you do this, does this happen? That's a test case, right? It's a very common terminology. Test case is basically every little thing that you're testing for is called a test case. So if you're looking at the mobile app for Facebook, is pretty much whatever we talked about above, like all this on the web app, pretty much the same thing for the most part. But in addition to that, the mobile app is different, so you have to test for different things. You test for notifications. Do notifications show up? Do location services work correctly? Does calling work? Or the colors, the buttons, the font, the text, the spelling, everything, is it correct? Networking, like a lot of apps, you have to test them. What happens when you move up, when you switch the network from a Wi-Fi to a 5G or 4G, right? Usually when we're using our phones or any kind of app, we're inside our house, we're using the Wi-Fi, and when we leave our home, we switch to a 5G network or 4G network. Usually we don't have any interruption, right? So you got to test that. If you're testing a mobile application, you want to test for that functionality. So for one little page, there are thousands of things you can test for. And as a software tester, that is part of your job, is coming up with those, what to test for, and also executing it. Executing it meaning testing it. And when you're an automation engineer, you actually write code that will execute all those steps. And we'll talk about that coming up. So now I'm going to talk about why I think it's interesting. Okay, this is, even though it's my opinion, they are facts. They really are facts. Most of them are facts, and some of them are opinion. So as you know, software is an integral part of our lives now, right? Everything we do, from the way we eat to the way we sleep to the way we communicate, everything is depending on software. So it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Even with AI is going to help us build software faster and build more complicated software. So as you can imagine, our lives is going to be depending more and more and more in software. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago versus now, the amount of dependency we have in software is just increasing, and it's just going to continue to increase. What that means is there will be more software to be tested, right? So the field is not going nowhere. It's really not going nowhere. There are going to be fancier tools. There are going to be really cool things that we can use to test, but software will always have to be tested. So the career is always going to be there, and the growth is really unlimited. So to me, one of the interesting thing about it is it's just not good. It's a career that it's not going to be replaced anytime soon at all, right? It's always going to expand. I forgot the numbers, but I think in the next 3 years or so, I think it's going to increase by 20% or something like that, the demand. I probably should put that number on the slides, but it's just increasing. Okay, so as you see on my points, the need for testing will keep growing. There will always be jobs, and it's an easiest way to get into the field of software. I really think so. I really believe it's one of the easiest, if not the easiest, way to break into the IT field. So if you're not in the IT field already, and this is really like, you just have to learn few basic skills, and then you're able to get a job. Of course, it's competitive, but depending on your skill set, you can definitely break in, just like I did. And then I'm going to talk about it, but then the growth potential is just ridiculous, right? Like, it just opens so many doors. You have so many options of which directions you're going to go to. So, and it's just, the barrier to entry is really easy. Like, literally, like my bootcamp that I'm going to try to introduce to you later on is basically 3 months. And in 3 months, of course, it depends on how much time you have to study, but you literally can get a brand new career. It's quite amazing. And you just need to practice and study and learn the stuff. So I think it is the easiest way to break into the field. Another reason why software testing is interesting is because software bugs can have severe consequences, right? So a bug in the software world means an issue, an error, or a problem, a defect. The right word would be defect, right? If a software has a defect, it's called a bug, okay? And that came from an actual bug, actually. I heard the story where a long time ago, when computers used to be huge, right? Computers used to be the size of a room or the size of a closet. And there was a problem, and when they go in there, I think it was a rat that they found. I can be wrong with that, but like an actual rat that was chewing up on the wires or causing issues. So they just said, oh, we got a bug, and from then on, any issue in software is called a bug. That's just the terminology. So for you to visualize how important software testing is and how important finding bugs is you can imagine how bad is a bug in a software hospital, in a hospital software, right? If you think of if there is an issue or a defect in a hospital software, it's a big deal, right? If your ventilator has an issue, then you might not be able to breathe, right? It can have severe consequences. What if there is a bug in a weapon software? What if there is a bug in a spaceship or in a car software? Anything. Imagine the Tesla. The whole car is software, right? Like it's operated software, and if it's not tested thoroughly, and if there are bugs, it can have severe consequences. So being part of that, being part of the person making sure things work the way they're supposed to work, it is really rewarding, especially for some people. That is very rewarding. So that's another interesting thing. And companies invest a lot in quality because it's much cheaper to find the bug early than to release it and cause problem and deal with it. It's so much cheaper. So companies actually invest a lot on their quality. Okay, and like I said, it is the easiest way to get into the field of software. So that's really what I believe. And if you want more explanation, if you want to see more examples, if you set up that meeting with me on one-on-one basis, I can explain more about why I feel that way. But I really do feel that way. Okay, another one. This might be my favorite slide in the entire presentation, because this kind of demonstrates the kind of exposure you get. As a QA, you get to work with pretty much everybody. You're like the middle guy. The designers are going to talk to you. The DevOps people you have to deal with. DevOps people are the people that make sure the software is running. Like the engineers would build it, and DevOps make sure it's running, and the architecture and everything. So you got to deal with them all the time. You got to deal with other senior QAs or other QAs. You got to deal with developers. You got to deal with engineering managers. So what happens is, first of all, you make friends, right? So since you have to deal with so many people, you have to interact with so many people. Maybe deal is not the right word, but I meant that in a very positive way. You are interacting with so many different people. One, you make friends. Two, you get to know what they do, right? If I want to be a DevOps, I know exactly what their days look like, what their skill sets look like, and what the field is all about. So if I want to transition to a DevOps, now I have such a wide lane. I know people and I know what it takes. All I have to do is pick up the skills, right? Whatever they need to do. Like right now, these days, DevOps, are they really good at the cloud, right? Either it can be Google's cloud or AWS. They're just really good at that. So if I want to be a DevOps, I know what I need to study. So I'll need to go study the cloud, and I know what to expect. Same thing with the designers. If I had any interest in designing, then I have the connection. I know what they do. So it's easier for me. So this is a huge benefit. You get into QA, you work for a year or two or less. And if you're not feeling it, you know what I'm saying? If you see some other thing that you like, then the lane is open. So I think that's a huge benefit. And I personally know several people that switched. I know a person that I hired myself. I hired her as an intern. Then we hired her full-time as a QA. And I think she did QA for like less than 6 months. She's more of an artistic person. So she went into designer. She made friends, and they allowed her to join their team, and they paid for her training. She got training, and she became a designer, and she's really happy as far as I know. I know a person who went straight to developer. Actually, he was a DevOps, worked on database stuff for a while, and moved to developer. And I know somebody who's in release management that started as a QA. So it just opens so many doors. And that's why I think that's why I think QA is just really, really awesome. And that's why I'm spending more time on this slide compared to the other slides. Then other benefits, those are more of my opinion, but side income with programming, right? You can pick up side gigs, writing code. You can simplify your daily life. If you have some things you do at your current job or whatever that, if you ever have something to do you repeatedly on the computer, like copying some information from one place to another place, or dealing with spreadsheets or formatting spreadsheets like that, having this basic coding skill would just simplify your life a lot. For your family, if you have kids, family, knowing how to code, knowing the industry, obviously you'll be able to help them out. And most importantly, you have unlimited potential for career growth. Like you can start as QA and just grow. I don't work directly under him, but I have an engineering manager. Basically, he manages engineers, and he started out as a QA, and it just took him a few years to become an engineering manager, and that has to do with his personality. He's just a great guy. More benefits. It's a really chill environment. Like it's not really high pressure. From my experience, of course, there are times when there are deadlines and you have to meet the deadlines, and the day before the deadline, there are pressure, but not typically. Typically, it's quite chill. You work remotely. My personal experience, I live in Las Vegas now. I bought a house and moved here. But the company I work for, is still in California, in the Bay Area, specifically in Santa Clara. That's where the company is at, and I'm a fully remote employee, and it's quite awesome. And the demand is high. All you got to do is just go to the job search websites and just search for QA automation. Specifically for automation, the manual, the competition is quite, I hear quite, because a lot of people call me about the bootcamp, and when I talk to them, I get a lot of people that are manual and that actually have a manual experience, and they want to transition into the QA because they just having a hard time finding a job. So do your research, search for both manual and QA and automation. And look at the differences in the amount of jobs available. I'm going to talk about the differences shortly. So what is a QA role in the company? We talked most of this already, but I'm just going to briefly talk about it. We test, make sure everything is working. We write test cases. We execute the test cases. And if you're automation, you take it further and you write the code for it. But that's just testing. That's just one part of your job. It depends on how the company is set up. The way the way my company is set up, my hands are everywhere. I touch everything from the design all the way to the push. The push meaning publishing it to production. The obvious role is to test the application. We write test cases, so there are tools to document. If you work as a startup, you might be documenting test cases in a spreadsheet like Excel or Google Sheet or something. It's just a list of test cases, but there are tools like TestLink, TestRail. So as a QA, we are responsible for coming up with a plan. It's called a test plan. So somebody is building a product. We have to come up with a plan on how to test it. Okay, it's supposed to do this. So we're going to test this, and we document it. The difference is formatted and documented. Technically, we all are testers, right? We all use software. Just right now, we're all using the Zoom software. And if it doesn't work, we would know, right? Especially for major things. If the video doesn't show up, the screen sharing doesn't show up, we know that. So naturally, we are testers. But when you do it as a job, you actually have a structure to it. You actually document what you're testing so you can repeat it. And so you can also pass it over to somebody, and somebody else can actually execute the tests. So we document test cases. Sometimes, especially at the senior level, you get tasked to go research tools. There are so many tools. It's a huge field. It's a huge industry. So there are a lot of tools that will help us test, right? Selenium is the one you heard. That's like the most basic one. Selenium is what we use to test web applications, and I'm going to show you an example soon, like an actual demo of automation running. And our job is to actually think of a way to use the product in an intended way. Whenever there is a human involved, a human will use your product in an unintended way, right? Like there's always that chance. So our job is also to think of a way, okay, you're supposed to type in username here, but what if a person like puts in numbers, right? That's another example of a negative test case. It's called negative test when you're trying to break it. So you're always trying to break something and making sure the application handles it. It doesn't just break, right? There is different mode of failures. So when an application fails, usually it's supposed to be graceful. It's supposed to show you a message saying, hey, something wrong happened, especially if it's customer facing. It has to be formatted properly. If it's not designed properly, it might just show the actual code on the screen. It might just do really weird stuff. It might show a 500 error code. So our job is to see how can it break, and when it does break, does it handle it correctly? All right. We manage releases. So a release is the process of pushing the code to production. So like I said, there are environments, right? There will be like a dev environment. This is just an example. There will be a dev environment where developers are working on it. So it's usually really corrupt because they're making changes all the time. Then that code will move into a testing environment, which is a little bit more stable. It has a cleaner database, cleaner code. So you will test it on test environment, and then there might be more intermediate in medium environments. I can't even say that word, but you know what I'm thinking of. So to get it to the public, there's a process you have to follow, right? You got to test it, you got to get permission, all of that. And usually QAs, we are responsible for that. And it gets complicated too, because you got to make sure the right piece of code is being pushed out. We use Git. Almost every company use Git to manage the code. So the right branch, the right version is being pulled out. So you have a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. So we manage that entire process. We do releases frequently. You know how on our mobile apps we get asked to update our apps. That means they just released something. Sometimes it automatically does it. We don't even know it. But a lot of times was for the native apps, the apps that are fully installed on our phones. We have to actually take action to update it. That means they released it. For web apps, like when you think about Facebook, the web application of Facebook, they're always releasing new code. Always. We don't know it, right? As the users. So it's really frequent, and the QA is usually responsible for that. Imagine how many people are working on a project at the same time. So the project that you've tested and it's working great, but somebody makes a change that's not related to this at all, but it can break this. Like software is so interconnected. So even though you tested it, you have to test it again. You have to test it again. You have to test it every day, because something that changed here could have changed here, could have affected things here. So that's why automation comes in play. So manually to test things over and over, it's not feasible. It's very expensive, time consuming, and extremely boring in my opinion. So automation is very helpful there, because you just press a button, or you can put a schedule saying run this test every day, every hour, and it will just do it. So you can imagine that the need for testing is just always there. You coordinate, like I said, you're the guy in the middle most of the time. It all depends on your personality, right? You might be the guy that just keeps your heads down and just code all day. You might be the person that's in the middle, talking to everybody, maybe running the show. It all depends on your personality, but the opportunity is there. And the companies, they want you to be that guy that runs the show. Honestly, you get more credit and you grow faster if you talk more. If you're more talkative, more loud, and you write 10 lines of code and you write 100 lines of email, you are more appreciated in the corporate world, unfortunately. And that's not me, man. I like to code and just let the work show itself, but I gotta talk a little loud sometimes too. That's just part of anybody that works in the corporate world that knows that is the truth. So being the center man and coordinating is part of our tasks, and the better you are at that, the faster you grow. You might end up coding for like 6 months. If you have that kind of personality, you just code for 6 months, and after that you might get promoted to a lead, and you don't even have to code anymore. You just coordinate. So if you're that kind of person that says, oh, coding is so boring, you just learn it for the sake of breaking in. You're breaking in, and then you can just, like I say, expand your opportunities. Okay, responsible for tracking and manage changes and follow processes. Especially if you work for a bigger company, there is quite some processes you gotta follow. Communicate with third parties, coordinate integration with third parties, involved in hiring process, participate in hackathons. Hackathons are a competition that is like a 2-day competition where you code something from scratch and you build something and you compete, and people vote on whose product is better. You write production scripts and things like that. Communicating with third party is a big part of it. I don't have a team right now in India, but I had a team in India for 4 years. I've had meetings at night because I have on their time. Usually we do 9 p.m. our time, so it's like 8 a.m. their time or something like that. So you gotta be aware of that. Type of testing. There are several different types of testing, but mainly there's manual and automation. So I added load test here, load or stress testing, but I could have added that to automation testing, because load testing is done using a tool, sometimes writing code. So I could have put it in load testing, but I just wanted to break it out because the mindset and everything else is different. So manual testing is minimal coding, and automation testing is a lot of coding. You can learn those two in parallel. So in manual testing, a lot of it is terminology. A lot of it is just words, like knowing processes, like regression testing, smoke testing, user acceptance testing. A lot of it is terminology and writing test cases and having that mindset of being able to test something. Like you look at this mic and how do I test it, right? That is, and writing down, documenting how you test it. That is all and manual testing, that's what's involved. Thinking of a test case, coming up with a plan, writing down all those, like I say, there are tools, or you can use a spreadsheet, and then executing it manually, going there and testing it manually. So that is what manual testing is. And you can learn that as you're learning automation, as you're learning coding. You can learn, because like I say, it's terminology and it's more of art. So there is no reason for you to say, oh, I got to learn manual first, and then I'll learn automation. That just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. You have to start automation, because automation is writing code, which means you need a lot of practice, which means you need a lot of time. So I would start with automation, and on the side, that would be my side project, would be the manual testing, because it's a lot of it is like memorizing terminology and practicing writing tests. So I totally recommend doing those in parallel. Don't get intimidated. Every time I keep saying coding, for those of you who haven't not started yet, that might sound intimidating, because coding, well, a programmer, right? It really is not. When you take it in small chunks, it's really easy, man. Coding, like, at least to me, everybody learns it differently. Everybody can learn it. I with my full heart, I think everybody can learn it. It's just some people can learn it in a week, some people can learn it in a year, right? Like, there is a huge, depending on your personality, what type of learner you are. For somebody like me who has a technical background already, I've been taught logic I went to school for more than 8 years, right? Got my master's and everything for mechanical engineering. So my mind is totally a technical mind, right? I'm trained to think technically. So when I was learning coding, I absorbed it a lot quicker, right? For me, it was quick. And in my bootcamp right now, my students, I see a total difference for those people that just get it like that, and for those people that I have to explain twice and that actually have to go on the side and talk to me. So everybody's different, but I really think it's learnable. So I really don't think you should be intimidated at all. At all. I think it's very simple. It just depends on how much time you're willing to invest and how much time you actually have to invest. Your background has very little impact. Of course, like I just explained, if you come from a technical background, you will absorb it a lot quicker. But it really doesn't matter where you come from. It's all about your desire and your dedication. If you really mean it, if you really want it, and if you have the time, if you can afford the time to learn, and I think you can learn regardless of what your background is. That is my opinion, of course. And learning never ends. I got a million things to learn right now. Every time, especially in my course, like every time I teach something comes up, I'm like, oh, I don't know a lot about this. So, and new technologies always coming up. So learning never really ends, and I think for most people that is exciting. To me, that is exciting. The fact that I can always improve, I can always learn new things, and the new things that come out are like fancier and cooler all the time. So that's a good thing. And there's lots of resources, right? And starting from me and from Google, there is so much resource when you're trying to learn testing. Okay, that's in general testing. Manual testing is like what we just talked about. You are using the product as a customer would, or as the end user would. You're just using the product. You create the test cases, you execute them manually, you work with different teams, you manage releases, you file bugs. Remember I said bugs are issues, and there's a procedure how you report them. File bugs means you report them, and there are tools. I use JIRA. So in the industry, JIRA is a tool you manage all the work, a project management tool, and you report bugs using JIRA. And in my bootcamp, we use JIRA to manage all our homework on assignment, on the projects and everything. And we use JIRA. So my point of the bootcamp is to basically give students a real life hands-on experience. Like, so when you get a job, everything seems as if they already done it. So it's a real experience. It's almost like an internship. The only difference is the first part of the bootcamp is lectures, just talking about Python and just from scratch everything. And then working on projects, actually automating, so hands-on experience, okay? Communicating with overseas team. You need good common sense for the most part, because like I say, you're manually testing something, you're trying to break it, you're trying to visualize how a person would use it. So common sense is important. It's more of like an art, because you got to think about how would somebody would use it, right? So there's an art aspect of it. And the experience is the only way to get good at it. So my advice to you, for everybody here, is start thinking about how to test anything in front of you. Like I have this pen in front of me. It's kind of a fancy little colorful pen. And I can write a lot of tests, like what happens if I press on it? What happens if I do this? What happens when I write on it? What happens if I drop it? What happens if I unscrew it? I'm exercising my brain to think about how would I test this thing. So you guys can do that all the time. I advise you, if you are seriously considering this career, I advise you to start thinking that way. Anything in front of you. When you're driving, start thinking about how would you test the steering wheel, right? How would you test the windshield? You look at the traffic light. How would you test that? Any product in front of you, there has to be a way to test it. So start thinking that way. For me, when I did my training long time, like 9 years ago, I've been doing this for 9 years. On my exit interview from the program, the training I went, in the interview, the woman that was interviewing me, the teacher, a great woman, she just looked around the room and she saw a paper shredder. And she asked us to write tests. We didn't have to write it. We just need to tell her test for the paper shredder. And we came up to test like, what happens if you put a piece of paper in there? What if you put a stack of 10 papers, a stack of 100 papers? What if you spill water on it? What if you press the buttons too fast? What if you press 2 buttons at the same time? What if you press 3 buttons at the same time, right? So we came up right there on the fly how to test it. So for you, it's a good practice to start thinking about how to test something in front of you, how to break it, how to test it, and how to break it. Okay, just as a practice. So these are some terminologies in manual testing: regression, smoke, black box, white box, gray box, test case, use case. All of those are terminologies that you have to be familiar with as manual tester. So an automation tester is the same thing. You still have to know these words. So automation tester is basically you take what is to be tested and you write code that will do everything you do manually. So there's no way to automate something if you don't actually manually test it first, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Black box testing is when you don't know any code. You're basically just testing the user. If I go to the facebook.com and I use the application, click this, click that, that is a black box testing, and briefly. White box testing is you know some code. You're not writing code, but you know code. So you test something. If it breaks, you can actually go in the code and identify where the issue is. So when you report the bug, you can report it saying, oh, this is not working because the code is doing this, that. So, you have coding skills. Like if you're testing a Java application, you know how to do Java. If you're testing a React application, you know how to do JavaScript, things like that. And of course, you get paid more because you know code. Gray box testing, somewhere in between. It's not a very common term, but I want to bring it up because you might see it on job posts and things. So guys, I'm moving a little fast because I'm looking at the time, and I have a lot of content in here for 1 hour. But for those of you who wants the slides, please send me an email. Okay, I'm going to share my contact at the end, but it's admas@supersqa.com. I'll send you a slide. I can send you a PDF of the slide. All you have to do is request it. Okay. The recording also, the same with the recording, but I can automatically just send the recording. Most likely I will do that. Okay, so let's keep going because I really want to spend time on automation. Oh, these are really good resources. If you want to learn manual testing, I know guru99.com have some brief tutorial. UTest is a really awesome. You can actually make money on UTest. UTest, you can they have a university basically teaching about testing and stuff. And you can actually teach yourself how to do this stuff. And they have gigs. They pay very little from my knowledge, from what I heard. But it's a good way to gain experience. So utest.com and guru99.com. And of course, supersqa.com. That's my site. Check it out. A lot of resources there, but I focus on automation. Like my thing is automation. All right. So what is automation, right? That is my bread and butter of my career. That's really what I do. Software test engineer in test. Okay. A lot of times SDET. So when you're doing your search, your job search, just to study the field, you can use a lot of different terms. You can do SDET, the abbreviation SDET, Software Development Engineer in Test, or you can do Software Engineer in Test, or you can do QA automation. Most of the jobs, they will show up as QA automation. So we do create tests, we write code to execute the test, and everything else that a manual tester does, literally everything else. We manage releases, we communicate with other teams, but more importantly, my favorite part, writing code to execute the test. So I'm going to show you a demo of automation. We're going to run some automation right now in a little bit. But so an automation is, let's go back to that login page. I know most of you already know what it is, but just for those who doesn't know, let's go back to that login page. In the login page, you You type in, first you actually type in the URL, facebook.com. You click on login. You type in username, you type in password, you click on login or submit or whatever. And on the next page, you make sure the user is logged in, and you do that by maybe you're looking for a welcome message, or you're looking for something that shows you that you're actually in. So that is the testing part. That's the test case. So you write code. You can write this code in anything. Like, for example, Facebook is written in, it's a React application, right? Originally, when they wrote it a long time ago, it was PHP. Then they actually invented React. Excuse me. React was invented by Facebook. Now every website you see is built with React. It's the hottest technology out there, right? It's going to be replaced soon, but it is the hottest technology out there. Facebook invented it. So now the whole Facebook is built with that. And React is a JavaScript framework. So when we're testing it, when we write automation for it, it doesn't matter what language we write. So I do Python. What I do is Python. Everything I do is Python. So you write some Python code that would actually open the browser, goes to the site you want, clicks on what you want it to click, type in the username, fill in the form, submit it, and make sure the right page loads up. So you do that with the code, right? So it takes time to write the code, right? Like that one is quick. It might take an hour to write what I just explained. But then once you write it, you can just run it over and over as frequently as you need to, right? So that's what automation is. All the steps a human would do, starting from opening the browser. You open the browser, you navigate to a site, and you interact with the site. You can write code that will do all of that, and you're going to see it in action. So why automation? You can cover a lot of tests in a short amount of time. You're going to see right now, we're going to run 80-something tests in about a minute. And it's repeatable. Once you write the code, you can just repeat it. And it's more accurate, right? Because there is no human error involved. You have to write it correctly. You have to make sure there's no errors when you write it. But once you write it, there's no if there's no possibility of introducing an error, because it's written properly. Then you just run it as many times as you want. And here are some of the technologies you would be aware of when you're a QA automation, when you're the automation engineer. You are an engineer. At the end of the day, you are a programmer, right? So most of the time when you talk about QA or software testing or automation, you're always thinking about Selenium, right? Selenium is like the front-end guy, like the main guy for Selenium. There are other tools right now, but Selenium is the main one. So you always think about Selenium in some language. You can use Selenium with Java. You can use Selenium with Python. So a lot of times you're thinking about those two things, right? Then you come at backend testing. Again, you use whatever language, Python, Java, C#, PHP, whatever. But as an engineer, even though those are the core things, you still have to deal with a lot. For example, you write your test, then they have to go run somewhere, right? So, and they have to be scheduled. You're not going to run them on your laptop. If you want to run it every hour throughout the day, like let's say it's a smoke test, you run it every hour, you're not going to do it on your laptop, because then at night you're sleeping. Your laptop is off. So you need to put it somewhere. So you put it on Jenkins, right? Jenkins is a tool we use for that kind of things. Then how does Jenkins work? Jenkins might be running your test on AWS. And your test might be running with Docker. So as a QA, as an engineer, you're not just learning, you're not expected to know just Selenium and Python, but in the entire software, like whatever tools we use, all of those run in a Linux. So I use icons, not names. So this is like Linux. It's a Linux icon. I love it. And you have to know Linux. You have to know the terminal. If you don't know how to use the terminal, if you're new, no matter if you decide to get into QA or not, learn how to use the Python, the terminal. I have an introduction video on my YouTube channel about the terminal, just showing you what the terminal is. Just don't be scared of it. It's like 10 minutes or something. I'm not teaching you commands. I'm just showing you what it is. And if I have time, I'll go to my channel and show it to you. So you have to know how to use a terminal, no matter what your background is, no matter what you're doing. It's just a simple thing. So my point here with this slide is, as an automation engineer, you're going to have so many skills. Okay, you're going to learn so many technologies. If you go to my team and ask the developer, right, the person that's building the tools, they know literally this, right? This plus more. I know more than this. This is not everything I know, but we know exactly the same thing. They might get deeper into each, like AWS, right? I know things about AWS. I'm not deep into AWS. Let's see, SQL. I know everything I need to know about SQL, but not everything there is to know about SQL, because we are QAs. That's our advantage. Even when we learn Python, the type of code we write as QA is a lot easier than the type of code you would write if you're building the product. If you're building a whole application, there's a lot that goes into the type of code you write. You have to follow a lot of rules, a lot of design patterns, and things like that. When you're writing code for testing, you're just using the basics of the code. So huge advantage. You don't have to go too deep into it. How to get started? Focus on programming. So the programming language is the base. So for example, let's say you're a foreigner, you come to the US and you want to get a job, right? The first thing you need to know is you need to be able to know English, right? You need to be able to communicate with the people. So it's the same thing. And in automation, the first thing is a programming language. So I highly recommend Python, because Python is extremely popular. I mean, that's not the reason I recommend it, but that's benefit. But it's one of the easiest to learn. So a lot of people would recommend you Python, Java, JavaScript. Definitely not JavaScript. JavaScript is not that easy. Java is more difficult than Python. So if you're new, I do recommend you start with Python. But if you have a reason to start with Java, for example, if you learn Java, you have a guaranteed job waiting for you. Like if you work for a company as a manual tester and they use Java for their testing, and if you learn Java, you'll get a job. Yeah, of course you go learn Java. Why would you learn Python? But if you are a person that's just going new, you don't know what opportunities are waiting for you, you want to learn something so you can land a job, then you would start with Python. Learn basic HTML. Really basic. We don't write HTML, but we test HTML. So w3schools.com have an awesome HTML tutorial. In general, it's a great website. w3schools.com and supersqa.com. Super Software Quality Assurance. That's what Super SQA stands for. And do some projects. And if you need ideas, hit me up and we can talk. I'll be happy to get you started. And of course, consider joining my bootcamp. If you want to practice automation, you can use my site, demostore.supersqa.com. It's an e-com site that I built and my students built. For those of you who are in my Python Selenium course, you are going to build this. There is a tutorial on how to build it. Also on my YouTube, there is a tutorial on how to build it. It's totally free, and within 30 minutes, you can have a full-blown e-commerce site running on your laptop. Completely free, won't cost you a thing. And for courses, check out my website. Let's quickly talk about salary expectations. I'm going to go over this really quickly. So this is 3 months old. About 3 months ago, I did this research. I figured it won't change very much, so I didn't do a new research for this webinar. So salary.com is saying the median pay is 84K. I don't know what location this is. This one is glassdoor.com. This is for a senior person, and this is in San Francisco, so it's probably at the higher end, right? And this is medium, though. You gotta remember. Look at this. There are people paying getting paid 240K as a QA. I mean, that's so exciting. I'm nowhere there, but eventually I can get there. It's like I say, it's about a personality thing. If you talk a lot, and if you communicate a lot, and if you're loud, and if you're visible, you can get there. If you're just good at coding, it's probably not possible to get to that level, but you never know. But that is so exciting, right? Starting at 160, but that is a senior. I don't really want to mention that. Let's keep going. This is another one from glassdoor.com. This is not a senior. It says 0 to 1 year experience and 110 average to start, right? Amazing. In my opinion. I don't know about you guys, but I lived in California where it's really expensive, and that kind of salary is pretty awesome. And this is from glassdoor.com again. There's just different breakdowns. And as you can see, most of the estimates are in the 6 figures or close to 6 figures. So I put this here as a motivation. And this is a research you can do. This is not my opinion or anything, right? That's why I'm sharing the URLs where I'm getting them from. This is from payscale.com. All right. So what do you expect from a bootcamp? So I have a bootcamp. I've been creating video courses, self-paced courses on Udemy and on my site, the same courses on both places. You can get them as a bundle on my site. So I've been doing this for about 7 years or so, creating those courses and maintaining. I didn't create tons of courses, but I created some key courses and I just maintained them. But now I wanted to teach live using Zoom. So there's more of a hands-on experience, and I'm not just teaching Python or Selenium. I'm teaching engineering in general. Like everything you see on the screen, you're going to get to experience them. You're going to see how they're going to be used. You're going to use them, and you're going to put them on your portfolio. The most important thing is you're going to have a portfolio and a resume that you can showcase. You can say, oh yeah, I know I created a website, then I created tests, and I scheduled them on GitLab or GitHub or Jenkins. So you can say I have hands-on experience dealing or working with this fancy in-demand tools. That's really what I want to get. I want my students to get out of this bootcamp. The way I designed this bootcamp is so you get experience with all those tools. At the minimum, we use PyTest, Robot Framework, and Behave, and GitHub, JIRA, Slack. We use Slack to communicate. We use JIRA to manage everything. We learn about Git. It's basically an overall experience. It's 3 months, so it's quite compressed, but the advantage is now you have a plan. At the end of the 3 months, if you need more practice, which you probably will, then now you have a framework, right? So, and you have a coach. So it's not like a university, like that after the semester is over, you can't really talk to the instructor. The instructor is not obligated to help you out. In this case, we are building a relationship. So the 3 months is just to be live in class like this. This is a setting. This is my office. The course is going to be just like this, and you're getting me. So you get a coach. You get me as to help you out. And after the 3 months, you keep that relationship. That I think that's just really, really, really advantageous. For me, I just did a manual testing and I got into a company, got the job as an internship, and I learned automation in that internship. So I have people around me. I already have coaches, and some of them are still around with me. I have coaches, so that's a huge advantage. And I'm looking at my students right now, the kind of questions they ask and the kind of stuff they get stuck with, and having a person to respond and help them out right away is really big advantage. Of course, you can search it. Of course, you can Google it. And ChatGPT is so helpful. If you guys are not using ChatGPT for your learning experience, please do. It's such a great tool for learning. So keep using ChatGPT. If you're not, start using it. So having a coach is just a big deal. And this bootcamp is not about a course. It's more of about a coach. Having a person to give you a structure, okay, to give you a plan. I'm basically giving you a blueprint of what you should study, but I'm also teaching you that stuff. So if you like my character, right, the way I'm speaking, my setting, my accent, the content of the bootcamp is really gold, right? In my opinion, and of course my students can speak to that. I think it's gold. It is fast. It's fast paced, but it's just about if you like me or not, right? If you like my style or not, if you're feeling it. And that's really the content and what you're learning. There's no question about it. You're going to get a lot of value, especially for the money. I don't think there is any other program that you can pay the amount of money I'm charging and get a live person helping you, and especially beyond whatever times. Like right now, the course is 3 months, twice a week. Beyond that, I'm always going to be there to support you, and that's my promise. Okay, and you're going to get a real hands-on experience. So a lot of other I've seen, I look at my competition. I call them competition, but I'm just getting started. They call it internship. I'm sure if you're doing research, they call it internship. And if you ask what's an internship, it is really a project. So there's no doubt I'm going to start calling my projects internship eventually. Okay. Let's see what else. Terminology, processes, just hands-on experience. You're going to build a great resume. That's really at the end of the day, the most important thing is for you to get a job or to get an advancement in your job. And we're going to get a lot of hands-on experience with working on real things. So, your resume is going to be loaded. It's going to be loaded. Prerequisites, basically none. If you have basic computer skills, again, if you never use the computer, it's going to be tough. If you use the computer a little bit, then it's going to take you longer to learn. But I truly believe there's nobody that is incapable of learning. I think everybody's capable of learning, but everybody has a different time frame of how fast they would learn. So that's really the way I think of it. But the best thing to do is, of course, to talk to me. And if I feel like you're early, if I feel like, I try to be honest as much as I can. I'm really an honest person. At least I think I am. If I think you're not ready, then maybe I'll suggest the video courses. You just start with the video course, and then, we'll see what next step for you is. But it's a really good idea for you to talk to me one-on-one. On my site, there is a calendar you can you can book time. I'll show you that shortly. I know I'm running out of time. Give me a few more minutes. I apologize for taking up your time, but I think I got like 2 slides left. This one is job guarantee. I just want to put this here because everybody asked for it. But if you really think a little bit deeper into that question, it is an impossible question. It's an impossible to guarantee a job, because some people will sleep all day, some people will study all day. So how could I give a guarantee, right? Like, it doesn't matter. There's no way to give a guarantee, because some people study, some people don't. I can't guarantee anything. What I can guarantee is if you do the work, that I'm giving you a solid skills. I guarantee the skills are. I work for a Silicon Valley company. We use whatever the latest technology, we use it, and I have experience with it, and that's what I'm really giving to the students. So I guarantee you're gonna have skills. I guarantee you're gonna have support from me. That is like I'm a man of God, and I there's no way I'm gonna hold on my word. So I'm gonna support you, and my success, my business success, depends on your success. Like, I need to be able to say my students got a job. Unfortunately, the current batch is my first one, so I don't have that data yet, and I cannot wait to have that data. I have about 17 people in there. Not all 17 people are going to be ready by the end of the 3 months, but few will, right? The people that don't have jobs and that are studying all day, those will, because the people that have families, that have kids, they're learning slower. But I'm working with them. I'm guiding them to accommodate their schedule. So I cannot guarantee a job, but I can guarantee the skill set, and I can guarantee the support from me. Okay. In terms of refund, yes, I offer refund after the first day. So the first day is Saturday, June 10th, and the next day is Tuesday. So all the way until Tuesday, until the start of the second class, until the start of June, Tuesday. So you attend Monday. You attend Saturday. It's a 3-hour course. You see how you feel about it, and until Tuesday, you can request a refund. So absolutely, there is a refund. And this is my gift to you as a thank you. I know some of you are already part of my course, my Udemy, on the course on Udemy on Python and Selenium. But the same course, you can take it on my site. The coupon code is free 2023-0511. It's today's date. It's really easy to remember, okay? You guys take a screenshot or just remember it. It's free and today's date. And I'll put it back up on the screen. I want to show you a quick automation. So first of all, let me show you the site we're testing. So if you're part of my class, you already know, but there is this site, demostore.spreadsqa.com. So you can create this site easily. It's very easy to create the site. It's an e-commerce site. So you can practice automation. So you have, if you create, you can use this to practice, but this is a public site, right? I made it public to everybody. So you can use the front end, but the back end, I cannot give you access to the back end. I cannot give you access to the API. I cannot give you access to the database because you can mess it up. So if you have your own, you can practice that. You can practice back end, front end, load test, anything. So you can create your own. I'll show you on locally. I have one exactly like this, literally like this. But this, as you can see, this is running on my local machine, and this is available. Anybody can get to this. demostore.supersqa.com. So I have a bunch of tests against this site, and I'm going to run it. So this is a terminal. I'm just going to hit one command. I'm just going to say python-m pytest tests. I'm using pytest for those of you who probably don't know what that is, but it's just a Python framework. So right now it's running through a bunch of backend tests. So I have a combination of backend and front end. So it's going to finish, it goes alphabetical. So it did all the backend because the folder name, backend and front end, B and F. So it's going to do a bunch of backend tests. Then it's going to start doing the front end test. And when it's doing the front end test, you will see the browser to start to open. Meanwhile, I can put back the slide so you can see the screen, the coupon. The coupon will expire tomorrow night or Saturday morning. I don't know how the 24-hour thing counts. So yeah, look at this automation. You can see my hands are free and the browser is opening up, and it's going through some tests. It's actually going there, clicking, adding to cart. This looks like an end-to-end checkout. So it actually goes through the checkout process. So it's running through a lot of tests, and this is all Python. It's not complicated in any way, but it does require practice. So we're going to see how quick it is to run all those tests. And I'll bring the coupon back. I know a lot of people are interested in that. and I actually can put it in the chat so it's easier for you to copy paste. I'm gonna do free 2023-05-11. All right, I put it in the Zoom chat. So as you can see, we just run 87 tests, 5 failed, 82 passed. Total of 87 tests in 72 seconds. That's the beauty of automation. 1 minute, 12 seconds, 82 tests. If you were to do this manually, you can imagine how long it would take you to do, right? So that was a quick demo of automation. I just want to show you how fun it is. I think I'm going to open the floor for questions. I am 6 minutes over my plan, but I started 6 minutes. I gave you guys to join 6 minutes. I started 6 minutes late. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then you guys can ask questions. All right.